Picture this. While you're using cannabis to binge Netflix or laugh with friends, ancient civilizations were using the exact same plant to commune with gods and unlock profound spiritual insights. We're essentially using a master key to open only the smallest, darkest closet. Archaeological evidence reveals a fascinating 5,000-year journey from Siberian shamans to Indian temples. The Scythians, known as cloud walkers, burned cannabis in enclosed tents for shamanic journeying across spiritual realms. Ancient Vedic texts didn't call it a party drug. They named it Vijaya, meaning victory, and dedicated it to Lord Shiva, the ultimate meditator who used it to transcend ordinary consciousness. What's remarkable is how consistent these practices were across cultures that never contacted each other. From the steppes of Central Asia to the temples of India, cannabis wasn't recreational. It was a sophisticated spiritual technology. Modern science is now discovering the neurological mechanisms behind these ancient practices. The endocannabinoid system, only discovered in the 1990 seconds, reveals why our ancestors considered this plant sacred. They understood something we've completely forgotten. Think about the last time you felt truly present. Not thinking about your to-do list, not replaying yesterday's conversation, not worrying about tomorrow's meeting, just completely here, now, aware. If you're struggling to remember such a moment, you're not alone. Most of us spend our entire lives listening to an internal narrator that never stops talking. Scientists call this the default mode network, and it's essentially your brain's screensaver. Except, instead of peaceful images, it runs an endless loop of mental chatter. This network, discovered through advanced brain imaging, becomes active whenever you're not focused on a specific task. It's the voice that judges, compares, worries, and plans. It's your ego's broadcasting system, and for most people, it dominates their entire conscious experience. Here's what's fascinating. When researchers studied the brains of Tibetan monks who had accumulated over 10,000 hours of meditation practice, they found something remarkable. During deep meditative states, these monks showed dramatically increased gamma brainwave activity, the same frequency associated with heightened awareness and consciousness. But here's the kicker. Their default mode network activity dropped to nearly nothing. The internal chatter simply stopped. Now, you might be wondering what this has to do with cannabis. Everything, as it turns out. Your body possesses what scientists consider one of the most important biological discoveries of the past century, the endocannabinoid system. Think of it as your body's master control network for balance and harmony. This system was so crucial to human survival that it evolved over 600 million years ago, making it older than our nervous system itself. The endocannabinoid system works through an elegant lock and key mechanism. Throughout your brain and body, you have millions of specialized receptors, the locks. Your body naturally produces compounds called endocannabinoids, the keys. When these keys fit into their corresponding locks, they trigger specific responses that help maintain what scientists call homeostasis, your body's natural state of balance. The two main types of receptors tell a fascinating story. CB1 receptors cluster heavily in your brain, particularly in areas responsible for memory, emotion, pain perception, and yes, that default mode network we talked about. CB2 receptors concentrate in your immune system and peripheral tissues, managing inflammation and immune responses. When you consume cannabis, you're introducing external cannabinoids that interact with this ancient system. THC, the compound that creates cannabis's psychoactive effects, has a molecular structure that allows it to bind directly with CB1 receptors in your brain. But here's where it gets interesting. THC doesn't just randomly activate these receptors. It specifically targets areas of the brain involved in self-referential thinking, that chattering roommate in your head. Imagine your default mode network as a radio playing at full volume in the background of your consciousness. Cannabis doesn't turn off the radio entirely, but it gradually turns down the volume. As that mental noise decreases, something profound happens. You begin to hear the whispers of your soul that were always there, just drowned out by the constant commentary. This isn't mystical speculation, it's measurable neuroscience. Brain imaging studies show that cannabis use produces strikingly similar patterns to those meditation masters. Decreased activity in the default mode network and increased connectivity between brain regions that normally operate independently. Your brain literally starts communicating with itself in new ways. CBD, cannabis's non-psychoactive cousin, works through an entirely different mechanism. Rather than directly binding to cannabinoid receptors like a key fitting a lock, CBD acts more like a master locksmith, modifying how other compounds interact with the system. It increases your body's natural production of endocannabinoids while reducing their breakdown, essentially amplifying your inner wisdom's natural voice. But here's where the real magic happens: neuroplasticity. Your brain isn't the fixed, unchangeable organ scientists once believed it to be. It's more like a vast network of highways that can build new roads and strengthen existing ones based on experience. Every thought, every insight, every moment of expanded awareness literally rewires your neural circuitry. Think of it like this. Imagine your normal thinking patterns as well, worn paths through a forest. The default mode network keeps you walking the same familiar trails: worry path, judgment trail, anxiety avenue. But when cannabis quiets that internal GPS system, you're free to wander off the beaten path. You might discover a hidden clearing of creativity, stumble upon a stream of compassion, or find yourself on a mountain peak of profound understanding. Here's the crucial part. Those new neural pathways you create during cannabis, enhanced states, don't disappear when the effects wear off. Each insight, each moment of expanded awareness, each experience of deeper connection literally changes your brain's wiring. It's like discovering new rooms in a house you thought you knew completely. This explains why ancient cultures didn't use cannabis to escape reality. They used it to perceive reality more clearly. When the constant mental commentary quiets down, you can finally hear your authentic self speaking. You remember who you were before the world told you who you should be. The endocannabinoid system essentially serves as a bridge between your conscious mind and your deeper wisdom. It's why cannabis doesn't create spiritual experiences out of nothing. It removes the barriers that prevent you from accessing the profound intelligence that already exists within you. Modern neuroscience is finally catching up to what shamans and mystics have known for thousands of years. Consciousness isn't produced by the brain like a factory manufactures products. It's more like the brain is a radio receiver, and cannabis helps tune into frequencies that are normally drowned out by static. Understanding your brain's hidden operating system changes everything about how you approach cannabis use. Instead of randomly consuming and hoping for the best, you can work intelligently with your body's natural wisdom-accessing mechanisms. This is the scientific foundation that makes ancient spiritual practices with cannabis so remarkably effective. Your ancestors weren't just getting high, they were systematically accessing expanded states of consciousness, using tools that evolution specifically designed for that purpose. Now that you understand your endocannabinoid system as this incredible biological network designed for balance and awareness, we need to talk about what cannabis actually does when it enters this system. And here's where most people get it completely wrong. Cannabis doesn't create anything. It doesn't manufacture mystical experiences or spiritual insights out of thin air. What it does is far more profound and, honestly, more challenging than most people want to admit. It acts as a perfect, honest mirror, reflecting back exactly what's already inside you with stunning, sometimes uncomfortable clarity. Think of your normal consciousness like listening to music through a radio with static. You're getting the signal, but there's interference, the constant mental chatter, the protective mechanisms your ego has built up, the layers of conditioning that filter how you perceive reality. Cannabis essentially clears that static so you can hear your soul's music in high definition. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Whatever song is playing, you're going to hear it loud and clear. This creates what I call the two-directional bridge. When you use cannabis, you're stepping onto a bridge that can take you in either direction, depending entirely on your intention. You can walk toward discovery, healing, and genuine connection with yourself and the universe. Or you can walk toward hiding, escapism, and deeper disconnection. The plant doesn't judge which direction you choose. It simply amplifies whatever path you're already on. Let me break down the difference between spiritual use and recreational escape, because understanding this distinction will determine whether cannabis becomes a tool for growth or a crutch for avoidance. Spiritual use means approaching the plant with clear intention to heal something, to connect more deeply with yourself or others, to understand a problem you're facing, or to expand your consciousness in service of becoming a better human being. You're bringing questions, not just seeking answers that make you feel good. Recreational escape, on the other hand, is using cannabis to avoid boredom, numb emotional pain, escape stress, or simply kill time. There's nothing inherently wrong with wanting relief, but when cannabis becomes your primary coping mechanism for life's challenges, you're using one of the most powerful consciousness-expanding tools on the planet as spiritual junk food. Here's where the mirror metaphor becomes crucial. Cannabis magnifies whatever you bring to it. If you're approaching with genuine curiosity, openness, and joy, it will reflect and amplify that light, showing you beautiful aspects of reality you might never have noticed. I've had sessions where I felt so connected to the web of life that I could practically see the energy flowing between all living things. But if you're carrying anxiety, fear, unresolved trauma, or deep-seated anger, the mirror reflects that shadow back with equal clarity. This isn't the plant being mean to you, it's showing you what needs attention. The problem is, most people aren't prepared for this level of honesty. They want the cosmic insights, without the uncomfortable self-reflection. This leads to one of the biggest traps I see in cannabis spirituality, what psychologists call spiritual bypassing. You know these people. They have these beautiful, flowing thoughts about universal love and cosmic consciousness, while their actual human relationships are a mess. They can talk for hours about how we're all one while treating their family members like garbage. They're using cannabis to access these elevated states of consciousness as a way to avoid doing the hard, unglamorous work of healing their actual human issues. I've seen this in myself and countless others. You have this profound experience of interconnectedness, and suddenly you feel like you've transcended all your petty human problems. But then you come down, and you still haven't called your mother back. You're still avoiding that difficult conversation with your partner, and you still haven't dealt with the childhood trauma that's running your life from the shadows. Even more dangerous is how cannabis can inflate the ego while making you think you're dissolving it. The plant can make you feel incredibly wise, deeply spiritual, and profoundly connected to universal truths. And you might be accessing real wisdom, but if you start believing you're more evolved than people who don't use cannabis, or that your insights make you spiritually superior, that's just your ego wearing a spiritual costume. I've met people who think they're enlightened because they can have deep thoughts while high, but they're still jealous, petty, and self-centered in their daily lives. Real spiritual development shows up in how you treat the cashier at the grocery store, not just in the cosmic revelations you have during your sessions. The most challenging aspect of using cannabis as a spiritual mirror is that it will eventually show you your shadow self. Those parts of you that are jealous, angry, scared, selfish, or wounded that you've tried to lock away in the basement of your consciousness. This is actually where the real work begins, but it's where most people turn away. I remember a session where instead of the usual feelings of love and connection, I was confronted with how resentful I was toward a friend who had hurt me years earlier. The plant held up this mirror showing me how much energy I was still giving to this old wound, how it was affecting my ability to trust people, how it was making me smaller. It wasn't pleasant, but it was exactly what I needed to see to finally heal it. The key is learning to approach these shadow revelations with curiosity rather than judgment. When the mirror shows you something uncomfortable, the question isn't, how do I make this go away? What is this trying to teach me? Cannabis can show you patterns in your thinking and behavior that you've been blind to, but only if you're brave enough to look. This is why set and setting matter so much, but not just in terms of physical environment. Your internal set and setting, your emotional state, your intentions, your willingness to face whatever comes up, determine whether you'll use this mirror for genuine growth or just spiritual entertainment. The plant will reflect back your relationship with honesty itself. If you're someone who tends to lie to yourself about your motivations, your relationships, or your patterns, cannabis will amplify that self-deception. But if you can approach it with radical honesty and genuine willingness to see yourself clearly, it becomes an incredibly powerful tool for psychological and spiritual development. The question you need to ask yourself before every session is simple. Am I seeking truth or am I seeking comfort? Because cannabis will give you exactly what you're looking for, And the difference between those two intentions will determine whether you're walking toward freedom or just building a more elaborate prison. When Thoth spoke about the danger of outgrowing everyone around you, he wasn't trying to scare anyone away from the path. He was preparing initiates for what might be the most challenging aspect of genuine spiritual transformation, the profound loneliness that comes when you're dissolving in the chrysalis, while everyone you love is still discussing which profound leaves taste the best. Think about a lobster for a moment. To grow, it must shed its protective shell completely, leaving itself vulnerable and soft until a new, larger shell hardens. During that period between shells, the lobster is essentially defenseless. Every instinct screams to find shelter, to hide, to wait it out. But here's the thing, there's no going back to the old shell. It's been discarded, outgrown, left behind. This is exactly what happens with the mirror cannabis provides. Remember how we talked about the plant reflecting your inner state with perfect honesty? Well, that mirror doesn't just show you who you are, it shows you who you're becoming. And as your endocannabinoid system recalibrates, as those neural pathways start reorganizing themselves, you begin to shed layers of conditioning you didn't even know you were wearing. The caterpillar doesn't decide to become a butterfly. It enters the chrysalis as one creature and literally dissolves its entire cellular structure, breaks down into what scientists call imaginal soup. From the outside, nothing seems to be happening. But inside that chrysalis, something unprecedented is taking place. The caterpillar's body is becoming raw material for an entirely different form of life. Now imagine you're in that chrysalis state, your old ways of thinking and being literally dissolving, while your family and friends remain caterpillars. They're having animated discussions about leaf quality, the best branches to climb, caterpillar politics. They're living fully in the world of leaves while you're beginning to dream of sky. When you try to share what you're experiencing, they look at you like you've lost your mind. Why are you talking about flying? We're caterpillars, we crawl. The conversations that once felt like warm homes suddenly feel like cramped cages. Your college roommate wants to rehash the same complaints about work for the third time this week. Your family gatherings revolve around gossip and grievances that now seem to loop endlessly without resolution. Your old drinking buddies can't understand why you're not interested in getting wasted every weekend anymore. And here's where it gets really difficult. They start saying you've changed. But they don't say it with curiosity or celebration. They say it with confusion, sometimes accusation. You used to be fun. You think you're better than us now. You've gotten weird. The people who knew the old version of you can feel that something fundamental has shifted, and it makes them uncomfortable because it forces them to question whether they might need to change too. You find yourself speaking different languages, even with people you love deeply. They're operating from fear, scarcity, competition, the same programming you're beginning to see through. You want to share what you're discovering, but every attempt feels like you're speaking to them from across a vast canyon. The words that used to connect you now seem to bounce off an invisible barrier. This is when the temptation hits hardest to shrink back down, to put on the old personality like a familiar coat, to pretend you haven't seen what you've seen. It would be so much easier to just fit back into your old life, wouldn't it? To laugh at the same jokes, complain about the same things, want the same things you used to want. But here's what Thoth understood, and what every wisdom tradition teaches. This loneliness isn't evidence that you're failing. It's proof that you're growing. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign you've made a wrong turn, it's confirmation that you're on the right path. Every hero's journey begins the same way. The hero must leave the familiar village and venture into the unknown forest alone. Luke Skywalker couldn't bring his friends from Tatooine to become Jedi. Frodo couldn't drag the Shire with him to Mordor. The Buddha had to leave his palace. Jesus went into the desert for 40 days by himself. This isn't cruelty, it's necessity. Growth requires space. Transformation demands that you step away from the gravitational pull of who you used to be, and that includes stepping away from the people and places that reinforce your old identity. The isolation you're feeling is actually creating space for your authentic self to emerge, space for new relationships that match your expanding consciousness, space for your real tribe to find you. Because here's something beautiful that Thoth also taught. When you have the courage to become who you really are, you become a beacon for others who are ready for the same transformation. The people who are meant to be in your life will either grow alongside you, or they'll be replaced by others who match your new frequency. This isn't about abandoning everyone you care about. Some relationships will actually deepen as you become more authentic, but some will naturally fall away, and that's not a tragedy. It's evolution. Right now, in that chrysalis space, it might feel like you're losing everything, but you're not losing anything real. You're shedding illusions, outgrowing limitations, dissolving the false self that was never really you anyway. The loneliness is temporary. The growth is permanent. Trust the process. The butterfly doesn't mourn the caterpillar it used to be. Here's the thing that nobody talks about in spiritual circles, and it's the most crucial part of the entire journey. What happens after you come back down? Picture this. You've just had the most profound experience of your life. You visited what the ancient texts call the Golden City, that luminous realm where everything makes perfect sense, where you feel connected to the cosmic web, where love isn't just an emotion but the fundamental fabric of reality itself. You've walked through corridors of pure understanding, conversed with aspects of your higher self, maybe even glimpsed the geometric patterns that Thoth encoded in the very structure of consciousness. And then, you're back, sitting in your living room, the familiar weight of ordinary reality settling around you like a heavy coat. Most people think the journey ends here. They file away their mystical experience like a beautiful vacation photo, something to remember fondly, but not necessarily something that changes how they navigate their actual life. This is the greatest tragedy in all of spiritual work, treating transcendent experiences like exotic tourism instead of life-changing intelligence gathering. The ancient alchemists had a saying, "As above, so below." But they understood something we've forgotten. This isn't just a philosophical concept, it's an instruction manual. The above, those elevated states of consciousness, only becomes meaningful when it transforms the below, your daily existence, on this physical plane. Think about it this way. Imagine you discovered a hidden city made entirely of gold, filled with the wisest beings you've ever encountered, where every question you'd ever had about existence was answered with crystal clarity. You spend hours there, maybe days in subjective time, learning secrets that could revolutionize how humans understand reality itself. But then, you return home and never speak of what you saw. You don't change how you treat people. You don't apply any of the wisdom you received. You don't even write down what you learned. Did you really go to that golden city, or did you just have a really vivid dream? This is where integration comes in, and it's both an art and a science. Integration is literally the process of bringing the gold back from the golden city. It's taking those formless, ethereal insights and grounding them into the density of physical reality. It's spiritual alchemy in its purest form. The first step happens in those precious moments right after your consciousness begins to settle back into ordinary awareness. This is when the feelings are still fresh and vivid, when the insights haven't yet been filtered through your analytical mind's tendency to dismiss or rationalize away profound experiences. Get a journal, not your phone, an actual physical journal with paper and pen. There's something about the tactile process of writing by hand that helps anchor ephemeral experiences into concrete form. And write immediately while you can still feel the residual energy of wherever you've just been. Don't worry about making sense. Don't edit yourself. Don't judge what comes out. Just let it flow. Write about what you saw, what you felt, what you understood. Capture the emotions, the colors, the sensations. Record any messages you received, any realizations about your life, any shifts in perspective about old patterns or relationships. This isn't just journaling, this is alchemy. You're taking formless, fleeting energy and transmuting it into something tangible. You're turning a feeling into a fact, an experience into evidence, a vision into a roadmap. I've seen people have the most profound spiritual breakthroughs, only to lose 90% of the insight within 48 hours because they didn't capture it in this crucial integration window. The conscious mind is incredibly skilled at explaining away anything that doesn't fit its existing framework of reality. But when you write it down immediately, you create an anchor point that your future self can return to. Now here's where most people stop, thinking they've done the integration work. But writing it down is only the first half of the equation. The second half, and this is where the real magic happens, is taking one small, tangible action based on what you've learned. This is the weaving process. You're literally weaving the insights from expanded consciousness into the fabric of your everyday life. And it has to be specific, concrete, and immediate. If during your journey you felt called to be more creative, don't just write, "Be more creative," in your journal. Spend 10 minutes the next day drawing something, anything. It doesn't matter if you think you can't draw. The point isn't artistic mastery. It's honoring the guidance you received by taking physical action. If you realized you need stronger boundaries in your relationships, practice saying no to something small within the next 24 hours. Maybe it's declining to work late when you had plans with yourself, or choosing not to automatically say yes to a social obligation that drains you. If you experience that profound, universal love that cannabis can open us to, that recognition that everything is connected, that consciousness flows through all things, then consciously send that love to the trees during your next walk. Look at the sky and remember that feeling of cosmic connection. Smile at strangers with genuine warmth because you remember seeing the divine spark in all beings. These might seem like tiny actions, almost insignificant, but they're not. They're revolutionary acts of integration. Each small step builds a bridge between who you are in expanded states and who you're becoming in ordinary consciousness. Remember that mirror we talked about earlier, how cannabis reflects back your inner state with perfect honesty? Well, integration is how you use what that mirror shows you. It's how you take the self-awareness and transform it into self-evolution. Without integration, you become what I call a spiritual tourist, someone who visits beautiful, elevated states, but remains a permanent resident of their old patterns and limitations. With integration, you become a permanent resident of your awakened life, someone who has successfully relocated their consciousness to a higher baseline. The ancient shamans understood this. They didn't just seek visions for the sake of having mystical experiences. They sought visions to bring back medicine for their communities, solutions to problems, guidance for decisions. Every journey into non-ordinary reality had a practical purpose in ordinary reality. Thoth encoded this wisdom into his teachings about the transformation process. The goal isn't to escape this world, it's to bring the wisdom of other worlds into this one. It's to become a bridge between the realms, someone who can access expanded consciousness and then translate that expansion into expanded living. This is how you move beyond using cannabis as just a recreational escape or even just a spiritual practice. This is how you transform it into a tool for genuine life evolution. Because the real magic isn't in the altered state itself, it's in how you allow that altered state to alter your life. Start your integration practice with your very next session. Have that journal ready. Honor what you receive by giving it form, then honor that form by giving it action. The golden city is always there, waiting for your return. But the real treasure isn't in staying there forever, it's in bringing its gold back to transform the world you live in every day. Now, if you've been following this journey with me, you've probably started to notice something fascinating happening during your cannabis experiences. Maybe you've seen those swirling patterns behind your closed eyelids, or felt that sudden rush of understanding that seems to come from nowhere. What you're experiencing isn't just getting high, you're actually activating an ancient energetic system that mystics have mapped for thousands of years. Your physical body is just the beginning of who you are. Surrounding and interpenetrating your flesh and bones is what spiritual traditions call the subtle body, a brilliant, intricate network of light that carries information, emotion, and consciousness itself. Think of it like this. If your physical body is the hardware, your subtle body is the software running the whole system. This energetic anatomy has 7 main power centers, called chakras in Sanskrit, which literally means wheels of light. Each one governs different aspects of your existence, from your basic survival instincts at the base of your spine to your connection with infinite consciousness at the crown of your head. And here's where cannabis becomes truly interesting from a spiritual perspective. It has a particular affinity for the upper chakras, especially the 6th and 7th centers. The 6th chakra, located between your eyebrows, is often called the third eye. This is your center of intuition, inner vision, and psychic perception. When cannabis gently activates this energy center, people often report seeing geometric patterns, colors, or shapes behind closed eyelids, even in complete darkness. But it's not just visual. You might experience what I call downloads, sudden knowing without any logical explanation for how you know it. That moment when a solution to a problem you've been wrestling with for months suddenly appears fully formed in your mind, or when you understand something about a relationship or life situation with crystalline clarity that bypasses rational thought entirely. I remember working with a client who described her third eye activation during a mindful cannabis session as suddenly seeing the blueprint of my life laid out like a map. She could perceive patterns in her relationships, understand why certain events had unfolded the way they did, and most importantly, see the path forward with remarkable clarity. This isn't hallucination, it's enhanced perception, accessing information that's always been there, but usually filtered out by our busy, analytical minds. The seventh chakra, your crown center, is where things get really mystical. This is your direct connection to source energy, universal consciousness, whatever you want to call that infinite field of awareness that connects all life. When cannabis opens this center, and it doesn't happen every time, which is why intention and preparation matter so much, you experience what can only be described as a blissful sense of unity. Time doesn't just slow down, it seems to stop altogether. The boundaries between yourself and everything else become fluid, permeable. You might find yourself sitting in your garden and suddenly feeling the life force pulsing through the trees, sensing the interconnected web that links you to every living thing. It's not a concept you're thinking about. It's a direct experience of reality that our ordinary consciousness usually can't access. But there's something even more profound happening in your energetic system during these experiences. At the base of your spine lies what yogis call the kundalini, a coiled serpent of pure creative energy that normally sleeps dormant throughout most people's lives. This isn't metaphorical. Advanced practitioners can actually feel this energy as a distinct sensation, sometimes described as liquid light or electric honey. Cannabis, when used with proper intention and respect, can gently warm this primordial energy, encouraging it to begin its journey upward through your chakra system. As it rises, it creates waves of bliss that can be felt physically, emotionally, and spiritually. But more importantly, this energy acts like a cosmic cleaning service, clearing out old emotional blockages, limiting beliefs, and energetic debris that's been stuck in your system for years. I've witnessed people release decades-old trauma during these kundalini experiences, not through talking or analyzing, but through the simple process of allowing this intelligent energy to move through them and dissolve what no longer serves. One woman described feeling like someone was pulling thorns out of my heart that I didn't even know were there. But here's where we need to talk about respect and caution. The kundalini is incredibly powerful, and forcing it to rise too quickly through excessive cannabis use can create serious problems. I've seen people experience anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, and physical discomfort when they push too hard, too fast. This energy has its own intelligence and its own timeline. Your job isn't to force it, it's to create the right conditions and then get out of the way. Think of cannabis as a tuning tool for your soul's energy rather than just a recreational substance. Like any powerful tool, it requires skill, respect, and understanding to use effectively. You wouldn't hand a chainsaw to someone who'd never used one and expect good results. The same principle applies here. The integration work we talked about in the last section becomes even more crucial when you're working with these deeper energetic experiences. That download you received about your life purpose, you need to ground it in practical action. That heart opening you experienced, you need to find ways to express that expanded love in your daily relationships. This is why the ancient traditions always emphasized preparation, intention, and integration alongside any consciousness-expanding practice. They understood that opening these energy centers isn't the end goal, it's the beginning of a lifelong journey of embodying higher consciousness in ordinary reality. Your energetic body is constantly communicating with you through sensations, emotions, and intuitive hits. Start paying attention to these subtle signals, whether you're using cannabis or not. This is your inner guidance system, and learning to read it accurately is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Remember, you're not just getting high, you're participating in an ancient technology for consciousness expansion that connects you to thousands of years of spiritual wisdom. Treat it with the reverence it deserves. As you begin to shed the skin of your old self through conscious cannabis work, something profound happens that catches most people off guard. You start to feel alone, not the comfortable solitude you might have enjoyed before, but a deeper isolation that comes from seeing the world through new eyes, while everyone around you seems to be sleepwalking through the same old patterns. This loneliness isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's actually evidence you're doing something very right. When you start operating from that luminous energy body we explored, when you're integrating the gold you've brought back from your inner journeys, you naturally begin to vibrate at a different frequency. And here's what I've learned after years of guiding people through this process. Nature abhors a vacuum. The space that opens up when you release inauthentic relationships, when you stop pretending to be someone you're not, when you can no longer tolerate surface-level conversations about nothing, that vacuum becomes an invitation. Your authentic tribe is already looking for you, just as desperately as you're looking for them. The Rastafarian community offers us one of the most powerful examples of how this actually works in practice. When Marcus Garvey's prophecy about a king being crowned in Africa came true with Haile Selassie's coronation in 1930, a small group of Jamaicans didn't just adopt new beliefs, they recognized cannabis as the holy herb mentioned throughout the Bible. They saw references in Genesis, "I have given you every herb bearing seed," and in Psalms, "He causeth the grass to grow for the cattle, and herb for the service of man." But here's what made their community so extraordinary. They didn't just smoke cannabis recreationally, they built an entire spiritual practice around it. Their reasoning circles became sacred spaces, where the herb facilitated deep philosophical discussions about consciousness, spirituality, and liberation from mental slavery. They developed specific prayers and meditations, viewing each session as communion with the divine. The plant became a tool for overstanding, their term for a higher level of comprehension that goes beyond mere intellectual understanding. What emerged wasn't just a religious movement, but a tribe, a family bound, not by blood, but by shared understanding of the plant's sacred purpose. They created their own language, their own rituals, their own way of being in the world. When mainstream society rejected them, they had each other. When governments criminalized their practices, their spiritual bond only grew stronger. This is what authentic community looks like when it forms around conscious plant use. It becomes unbreakable because it's rooted in shared reverence for something greater than individual ego. Your tribe will find you in unexpected places, often when you're not even looking. I've watched people connect in the produce section of health food stores, bonding over conversations about organic living that somehow spiral into discussions about consciousness. Others meet in yoga classes where someone mentions their meditation practice and suddenly two strangers are talking for hours about their spiritual journeys. There's something about authentic presence that cuts through social conditioning instantly. When you're operating from that integrated space, when you're embodying the insights from your cannabis work rather than just talking about them, you emanate a quality that draws kindred spirits like a magnet. These connections feel different, conversations flow effortlessly, silences feel comfortable, and there's an immediate sense of recognition, meeting someone you've known forever. But here's where I need to warn you about one of the biggest traps on this path, the spiritual ego. As you begin to see through illusions that others still believe, as you start accessing states of consciousness that feel profound and meaningful, there's a seductive voice that whispers, "You're more evolved than them. You're awake while they're sleeping. You're enlightened while they're ignorant." This is poison disguised as wisdom. The moment you start looking down on your old friends as less conscious, the moment you feel superior to family members who don't understand your journey, the moment you divide the world into awake and asleep people, you've fallen into the spiritual ego trap. And ironically, this attitude will repel the very tribe you're seeking to attract. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a period in my own journey where I became insufferably self-righteous about my spiritual practices. I'd roll my eyes at friends who liked mainstream music, judge family members for their unconscious lifestyle choices, and subtly signal my superiority through the books I carried and the things I talked about. The result? I ended up more isolated than ever, surrounded by people who either fed my ego or tolerated my arrogance, but no one who could truly see me. Real spiritual growth makes you more compassionate, not less. More understanding, not more judgmental. The goal isn't to feel better than others, it's to feel more connected to others, including those who are on completely different paths. Think of yourself as a lighthouse instead of a searchlight. A searchlight frantically scans the darkness, desperately seeking what it's looking for. But a lighthouse simply stands firm and shines its light consistently, trusting that ships will see it when they need it most. Your authentic presence is your light. The integration work you're doing, the consciousness you're cultivating, the peace you're embodying, this naturally draws people who are ready for what you have to offer. When you stop trying so hard to find your tribe and start focusing on becoming the kind of person whose tribe would want to find them, everything shifts. Instead of scanning every social situation for potential spiritual connections, you simply show up as yourself. Instead of dropping hints about your consciousness practices, you embody the qualities those practices have cultivated in you. This doesn't mean hiding your interests or dumbing down your conversations. It means leading with curiosity rather than certainty, with questions rather than answers, with presence rather than performance. When someone mentions they've been stressed, instead of launching into a lecture about meditation, you might simply ask, what does stress feel like in your body? When someone shares their struggles, instead of offering spiritual solutions, you listen deeply and hold space for their experience. The beautiful paradox is that the more you focus on becoming worthy of the community you seek, developing genuine compassion, cultivating real wisdom, practicing authentic presence, the more that community begins to appear around you. Sometimes it's people who were already in your life but couldn't connect with the mask you were wearing. Sometimes it's completely new souls who seem to materialize exactly when you're ready for them. The work isn't finding your tribe, it's becoming someone whose tribe can find them. It's letting your inner transformation create the outer transformation naturally, trusting that the same intelligence that grows plants and moves planets is orchestrating connections that serve everyone's highest good. Your authentic community is already out there, probably feeling just as isolated as you do right now, probably wondering if anyone else sees the world the way they do. They're waiting for someone brave enough to drop the mask and show up real. That someone is you. Now that you've discovered your luminous energy body and found your authentic tribe, it's time to create the sacred container where true transformation happens. This isn't about getting high and zoning out to Netflix. This is about approaching cannabis as the ancient Egyptians approached their most sacred rituals with reverence, intention, and profound respect for the consciousness-expanding journey you're about to undertake. Creating a sacred container begins with transforming your physical space into a temple. I'm talking about actually tidying up your room. Clutter in your environment creates clutter in your mind, and when you're working with plant medicine, mental clarity is everything. Light a candle not because it looks mystical, but because flame has been humanity's oldest symbol of consciousness, piercing through darkness. Place meaningful objects around you, crystals if you work with them, photos of loved ones, books that have changed your life. You're essentially building an altar to your own awakening. Next comes preparing your vessel, your body. Drink water, because dehydration amplifies anxiety and clouds perception. Do some gentle stretches to release physical tension that might interfere with the experience. Take a shower if you can, literally washing away the stress and mental residue from your day. This isn't just symbolic, you're clearing your energetic field, just like those ancient priests would purify themselves before entering the temple. Now comes the most crucial part, setting your intention. Hold the cannabis in your hands before consuming it. Feel its texture. Smell its earthy aroma. This plant has traveled an incredible journey to reach you from seed to harvest to your hands. Set a clear intention for what you want to explore or understand. Maybe it's healing a relationship, gaining clarity about your life direction, or simply opening your heart to deeper compassion. Speak this intention out loud or silently, but make it specific and heartfelt. Before you consume anything, practice box breathing to calm your nervous system. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold empty for 4. Repeat this cycle 10 times. You're essentially downshifting your brain from the frantic beta waves of daily life into the receptive alpha and theta states, where profound insights emerge. Here's something most people completely miss: consume a very small amount. I cannot emphasize this enough. You are not trying to get lost, you are trying to get found. Think of it like adjusting the focus on a microscope. Too much, and everything becomes blurry and overwhelming. Just enough, and suddenly you can see cellular structures you never noticed before. Start with what feels almost insignificantly small. Wait at least 90 minutes, and only then consider if you need more. Most breakthrough experiences happen at doses far lower than people expect. But here's the ultimate truth that no one talks about. The goal isn't to need this plant forever. Cannabis is training wheels for your soul. When you first learned to ride a bicycle, those training wheels were absolutely essential. They gave you stability while you developed balance, confidence, and coordination. But eventually, you realized something profound: you were already pedaling on your own. The training wheels weren't making you move forward, they were just keeping you steady while you learned to trust your own capabilities. Becoming a sovereign soul means mastering your own inner kingdom. It means becoming the source of your own peace instead of seeking it externally. It means generating your own sense of connection instead of feeling dependent on substances or other people to feel whole. It means embodying love as your natural state rather than desperately seeking it from others. This transformation is gradual but unmistakable. You start noticing that you can access those expanded states of consciousness without the plant. You can feel that universal love during a conversation with a stranger. You can experience ego dissolution while stuck in traffic, suddenly laughing at how seriously you take your small daily dramas. You can feel that crown chakra connection simply by stepping outside and feeling genuine gratitude for sunlight on your skin. Your relationship with cannabis evolves from crutch to celebration. Instead of using it because you feel empty or anxious, you use it from a place of fullness, like sharing a bottle of wine with friends, to celebrate life's beauty, not to escape life's challenges. You're no longer seeking something outside yourself because you've discovered that everything you were looking for was already inside yourself. The insights you gain during those sacred sessions start becoming lived principles. That profound sense of universal love translates into genuine kindness toward the grocery store cashier having a rough day. That ego dissolution experience helps you respond with patience instead of road rage when someone cuts you off in traffic. That connection to cosmic consciousness becomes a daily practice of gratitude for simple moments: morning coffee, a friend's laughter, the way light filters through leaves. You realize you've become the light you were seeking all along. That divine consciousness you touched during your plant medicine journeys wasn't something external blessing you temporarily. It was your own true nature, temporarily unveiled. The cannabis didn't give you anything foreign, it simply removed the mental static that usually prevents you from recognizing what was always there. This is true sovereignty, understanding that peace, love, wisdom, and connection are not commodities to be consumed, but qualities to be embodied. You become the source instead of the seeker. You generate the very experiences you once desperately pursued. The plant becomes an occasional ally rather than a necessary escape, used consciously to deepen what you already know, rather than to find what you think you lack. If this video resonated with you and you're ready to step into your own sovereignty, let us know by commenting, "I understood." It